Unimaginable losses have been the hallmark of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Month after month, Putin callously feeds more of his soldiers into the meat grinder. That's not a bug in the Russian strategy, it's a feature. But now it's all catching up to Russia. Ukrainian intel has revealed that Russia's army is on the verge of collapse. The numbers prove it. Brutal statistics don't lie, as more Russians than ever are dying. And this is where things really start to shift for Putin and his barbaric meat grinder strategy. Russia isn't replacing its losses. April 2026 is over, and so ends the 50th month that Ukraine has spent battling back against Russian aggression. The numbers have come in, and April now marks the 5th consecutive month that Ukraine has pulled off something remarkable. More Russian soldiers are being eliminated on the Ukrainian battlefield than Russia is managing to recruit into its army. Ukrainian Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov revealed the news in a May 5th Telegram post where he declared, "In April, 35,203 Russian military personnel were destroyed or seriously wounded. All defeats are confirmed on video. This means that for the 5th month in a row, Russia has been losing more than it's able to mobilize and is gradually being choked by losses." This roughly matches the number of soldiers that Russia lost in March, when Ukraine managed to break its casualty record by taking out 35,351 troops. It's also worth noting that March has one more day than April. Based on Fedorov's statement, Russia is now losing a little over 1,170 soldiers every single day. If we tack an extra day onto April so that it matches March in length, Ukraine would have handily broken its monthly record by about 1,000 casualties. The death count is rising. And as you'll soon find out, it's only going to get worse for Russia from here. Returning to recruitment, the 5 months between December 2025 and April 2026 have seen Russia lose 156,735 soldiers, United 24 media reports. That's an average monthly casualty rate of 31,347. During the same period, Russia managed to recruit 148,400 personnel. That's a shortfall of about 8,300 soldiers, and it suggests that Ukraine is creeping closer to reducing the Russian force in Ukraine by 2,000 soldiers per month. That may not sound like a lot at first glance, but when Russia's entire strategy has devolved into hoping that having more manpower than Ukraine will be enough to win the war, a shrinking army is anathema. Russia needs to be replacing what it loses and build on what it has. It's doing neither, and it's a sign of a recruitment crisis looming that could end up pushing Putin into making the move that he's been trying to avoid ever since he launched his invasion. Mobilization may be coming to Russia, and that would change everything. By this point, you might be wondering how Ukraine even knows these numbers in the first place. We have a good answer on the casualty front. Nothing is being estimated here. Every single casualty is confirmed, as Fedorov reveals. Ukraine's defense minister says that its numbers come from Ukraine's Army of Drones system. The system offers bonuses to Ukrainian soldiers who upload footage of drone strikes that result in casualties, meaning every single casualty that Ukraine lists is essentially a data point that is being uploaded onto a system. The Ministry of Defense can watch every single casualty take place, and it rewards soldiers with E-points that they can use to then buy more drone equipment for their fight. This gives us a clear understanding of which units and weapons are most effective, the depth of damage inflicted, and the enemy's daily losses, Fedorov claims. It also adds another interesting wrinkle to the Russian recruitment-busting casualty figures that Ukraine has posted. 156,735 Russian casualties in the last 5 months is just what Ukraine has been able to confirm using its Army of Drones system. There'll be many more besides. Every artillery strike that isn't filmed adds to the casualty list. When Ukraine pulls off medium-range strikes against command posts and similar buildings, it'll be scoring casualties even if those casualties aren't being recorded by drones. 156,735 is the absolute minimum number of Russian casualties between December 2025 and April 2026. The real number may be thousands higher. To rub salt in an already gaping wound, Ukraine is also achieving its spectacular casualty rates for less money than it has ever had to spend before. The commander of Unmanned Systems Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, or USF, Robert Brovdy, has reiterated Fedorov's claim, but he also offers some interesting insight into the role that the USF is playing in bumping up Ukraine's casualty figures. According to Brovdy, the USF was responsible for striking 10,581 Russian troops in April. That's interesting alone, as it shows that around 2/3 of the casualties being recorded on the Army of Drones system come from regular soldiers on the ground. These are troops who are not part of the USF but are using drones against Russia. But sticking with the USF figure, Brovdi says that the USF is managing to achieve its casualties at a cost of just $882 per Russian soldier. That's tiny. Russia is paying its soldiers more than that for a single month of fighting in Ukraine. Exchanging enemy resources for the plastic and metal of a drone is one of the most effective exchange rates in modern warfare, Brovdi declares. And it's difficult to argue with him here. A single drone that costs just a few $100s is now enough to cost Russia a soldier, all of the equipment that soldier carries, and all of the money that has been invested into bringing that soldier to the front in the first place. In a war that is increasingly being decided by battlefield economics, this sort of return on investment is a game changer. And as we said earlier in the video, it's only going to get worse for Russia. Here's how. Ukraine has taken a systematic approach to inflicting as many casualties on Russia as possible over the past 5 months. That approach comes with an operational benchmark. In the USF, the main benchmark now is at least 30% of all targets that it engages should be enemy personnel. Over the last 11 months of operations, the USF has hit a 29.59% rate, so there is clearly still room for growth. Nevertheless, we see an upward climb. During those 11 months, the USF has eliminated 90,470 personnel. Given that April saw the USF destroy about 10,500 soldiers, we can see that the monthly figures are going up. There's still plenty of room to grow, and that means Russia's casualty rate may soon be even higher. Another of Ukraine's key benchmarks is the target of 50,000 casualties per month that Fedorov set when he became defense minister in January. Fedorov's logic here is simple. If Russia loses 50,000 soldiers per month, it won't be able to maintain its invasion. Right now, that maintenance is teetering on the edge due to faltering recruitment. But as with the USF benchmark, the 50,000 target shows us that there is more room to grow. It'll need another 18,000 casualties per month to meet Fedorov's target, which may seem like an exceptionally high bar to clear, but it isn't, and here's why. Over the last 5 months, we've seen Russia trading a record number of casualties for increasingly diminishing gains. So much so that April saw Russia record its first net territorial loss since August 2024. One of the main reasons why this is happening is that Ukraine's terrain right now is terrible for an advancing force. A freezing cold winter has given way to a wet and mushy early spring that is slowing the Russian offensive and bogging down its soldiers. In other words, Ukraine is recording its already massive casualty figures against a Russian force that isn't attacking as much as it will do from May and into the summer. Putin's strategy is all about meat. Send as much cannon fodder to crash against Ukraine's defenses as you can, and maybe you'll win. When the terrain solidifies in the summer, Putin will lean heavily into that strategy. More Russian soldiers will launch assaults, and Ukraine's drones will churn through even more of these soldiers than we're seeing right now. Throw Ukraine's middle-range strikes into the mix and you have the prospect of a disastrous summer mounting for the Russian military. According to Euromaidan Press, there has been a sharp uptick in Ukrainian strikes in the 20 to 150 kilometer or approximately 12 to 90 mile range in April. Ukraine pulled off double the number of these types of strikes in April than it did in March, and 4 times the number it managed in February. Again, we're seeing the systematic nature of Ukraine's attritional approach play out. Every strike in the middle range takes out a command post, a logistics hub, a storage depot, or any number of other targets that support Russia's frontline soldiers. With that support gone, those soldiers become vulnerable. Yet more casualties are the natural result. As all of this is happening, Russia is struggling with the recruitment crisis that we mentioned earlier. Putin simply isn't able to get enough people to sign contracts to go and die in his war, and that is making him desperate. Russia is going crazy with its efforts to recruit, and that is the even bigger issue that lies behind Ukraine's impressive casualty figures. But before we get to that, this is the military show, and we bring you the full picture that lies behind the headlines. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the button so you always stay ahead of the curve. Now, Russian recruitment. It's all going a little bit wrong. In an April 13th report, Military revealed that Russia's first quarter recruitment for 2026 had dropped by 20% compared to the same period in 2025. Last year, Russia was recruiting anywhere between 1,000 and 1,200 soldiers per day, which might have just been enough for it to keep up with the casualties it's experiencing in Ukraine right now. Fast forward to 2026, and daily recruitment is down to about 800, which is why we're starting to see the shortfall that Ukraine reports. This is happening even as cash incentives for signing up are climbing. Military says that the Russian federal government now offers a signing bonus of 400,000 rubles, or about $5,300 as standard. That bonus is often bolstered by regional authorities offering even more money for signing up, which means that the average Russian volunteer recruit is now receiving 1.47 million rubles, or over $19,600 just for signing their name on the dotted line. Pressure to meet quotas is now so high on regional governments that they are spending an average of 4% of their entire budgets on signing up soldiers. In some regions, this spending climbs as high as 10%, which is all money being extracted from budgets that are supposed to be spent on maintaining and improving the living standards of Russian people. Forces News points out that Russia is also offering overly generous compensation schemes as an extra carrot on the end of the stick. Those who are injured in Ukraine can get a $36,000 payout, assuming the injury is severe enough. That money is supposed to be paid to the soldier's family if they die on the battlefield. And yet, despite these massive and some might say unsustainable financial incentives, Russia still can't recruit enough soldiers to account for the sheer scale of losses that Ukraine is inflicting upon the Russian military. And it gets even worse. Now other countries are finding ways to hinder Russian military recruitment. On May 5th, the Moscow Times reported that the UK has unleashed a new round of sanctions that predominantly target 35 individuals and entities that are involved in helping Russia to traffic vulnerable migrants into the Russian army. The UK says that there is a barbaric network in place that Russia is using to tempt migrants into becoming cannon fodder for Putin. The prospect of Russian citizenship is often the carrot used here, along with the high pay. And what it means is that Russia can somewhat make up for its shortfall in domestic recruitment by essentially tricking people from overseas into fighting in a war that has nothing to do with them. If other nations, especially the US and the members of the European Union, create similar sanctions, another avenue of Russia's recruitment will be choked off, and the very evident problems that we're already seeing will be compounded. The numbers simply don't add up for Russia anymore. But the real problem for Putin is Russia's recruitment shortfall is pushing him to take even more desperate measures. Let's stick with the migrant recruits for a moment. On April 29th, the Kyiv Independent reported that Ukrainian intelligence had revealed a Russian plan to fast-track thousands of foreign fighters into the Russian military in 2026. The goal is apparently to get 18,500 migrants to sign up, which amounts to about half a month's worth of soldiers at Russia's current monthly casualty rate. Ukraine has also identified 27,407 foreign nationals fighting in Russia's army as of March 30th. That's up from around 18,000 in November 2025, and it shows us why the UK has created the sanctions it's just put in place. Putin needs these foreign fighters to make up the numbers in any way that he can, but the fact that he's using them at all shows how desperate he has become. Never mind the fact that most of these so-called soldiers are being tricked into joining the Russian army. Most won't speak a lick of Russian, they'll get no real training, they won't properly understand their orders, which makes them ineffective on the front lines. Putin isn't hiring for talent here. He's taking anything that he can get because his only priority is to ensure that the cannon fodder keeps on flowing. Crackdowns on Russia's foreign recruitment networks are going to stifle this particular desperate move. But Putin is throwing Hail Mary shots all over the place in his despairing attempts to get Russia over its recruitment slump. We've already talked about the frankly stupid amounts of money being offered to potential recruits, but now Putin is taking aim at two groups that Russia can ill afford to lose: the nation's youth and those who are working to try to sustain an economy that is already collapsing under the pressure of Putin's war. On the student front, Russia's Minister for Science and Higher Education, Valery Falkov, has told the country's universities that at least 2% of their students should be signing contracts with the Russian Defense Ministry, Pravda reports. That would mean at least 44,000 university students heading into Ukraine per year if Falkov gets his way. That number would rise to 76,000 if the edict includes other types of further education colleges outside of universities. But worse than this attempt to convince Russia's youth to die for Putin is the relentless pressure being placed on them. Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty reported in February that struggling students at Russia's Higher School of Economics are being given a heartbreaking choice: be expelled or sign a defense ministry contract. Other universities are following suit, with some having reduced their grace periods for missed assignments to as little as 2 weeks, with the same strings attached. Fail to hit the 2-week marker and the student gets expelled. Or they can join the defense ministry and get their education in an organization that will inevitably involve them in the Ukraine war. Putin has made Russia's educational institutions into a pipeline for more meat that he can send to the grinder. He's trying to do the same thing to Russia's businesses. In Ryazan, the regional governor has issued an interesting order to local businesses. According to the Moscow Times, the order is that the company with up to 300 employees must nominate 2 candidates to sign a contract with the Russian military. That number rises to 5 candidates if the company has 500 employees or more. And it's not necessarily just businesses that are being targeted. The language in the new order uses the broad terms organizations and institutions, which opens the door for all sorts of groups to be targeted. We foresee no problems here. There is absolutely no chance that business owners are going to follow through on personal grudges by sending their employees to die, and certainly no chance that Ryazan will slowly cripple struggling businesses by sending their employees to die. Sarcasm aside, this is insane. It's almost as desperate as Russia recruiting drunks into its military. That's what Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty reported that Russia was doing in an April 2nd expose. It reports on the story of Yegor Sabinich, who woke up after a night of heavy drinking in what he thought was a detox center. It was actually a military enlistment office, where he had been sent after being detained by police. Sabinich's signature was on the sign-up papers and he was off to Ukraine. Apparently this trick is becoming increasingly common in Russia. It comes to something when a Russian can't even enjoy a few shots of vodka without being press-ganged into Putin's diabolical war. And it doesn't seem to us that people who you find wasted on the streets are the best candidates to become soldiers. And yet, no matter how many ridiculous tricks Russia concocts to recruit new soldiers, nothing changes the simple fact: it isn't enough, and Putin knows it. Russia's president is now watching the total collapse of the Russian military in real time, and he knows that there is only one thing that he can do to stem the bleeding. Mobilization is creeping up on the Russian people. There are already signs that it's happening. On February 20th, Euronews reported that the Kremlin is planning to develop a limited conscription system to force involuntary call-ups of reserves to bolster the numbers in Ukraine. That's not quite full mobilization, but it's getting closer. And Putin knows that after 4 years of fighting a war that was supposed to be over in days, his people are losing patience. If the trigger is pulled on mobilization, Putin may have a revolt on his hands. That's exactly the outcome that Ukraine wants to achieve. Putin's mouthpieces are already laying the groundwork for what Russia is going to have to do. The Russian news agency TASS quoted Dmitry Peskov on May 3rd. He said, "You can see that the Europeans are mobilizing their forces, using an overt Russophobic campaign as a trigger. They are ready to spend big on military buildup." Translation: "Uh-oh guys, Europe is getting stronger. Russia is going to need more soldiers to deal with the threat." The Kremlin spokesman claims that a period of tough confrontation is looming with Europe. But really, he's just trying to ready the Russian people for the inevitable, which is that Putin will soon be forcing them to fight in Ukraine. Nothing can stop it now. 5 consecutive months where recruitment doesn't account for losses show that the appetite for Putin's war among Russians is waning. And as Ukraine leans ever more heavily into the strategies that have led to Russia's catastrophic casualty rate since December, Putin will be pushed closer to the brink. The desperate recruitment tactics aren't working. Mobilization is coming. And though he doesn't see it yet, Russia has lost the war already, and that final frantic move will be the end of Putin. Those whom Russia can still recruit don't live for long. Something is killing 90% of Russia's soldiers before they ever make it to the front lines, and we can sum it all up in 2 words: kill zones. You want to find out more? Well, watch our video to see how Ukraine has turned Russia's war of attrition on its head to achieve the sorts of casualty rates that we've seen in 2026. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Military Show as we break down the Ukraine war in numbers. And thank you for watching.